Thank you. Good afternoon. In our last talk, Patanjali had taken us into the wonderful world of Vairagya, and he took us through two kinds of Vairagya. That is Vashikar Vairagya, the lower Vairagya, and Par Vairagya, which was the higher Vairagya. And he says in his sutra that in this Par Vairagya, there is a glimpse, there is a khyati, there is a knowing of the Purush inside. And we also saw that in his third sutra, he used the word drashtu. And drashtuhu is the one who sees the mind. And Purush is the one who sees the three gunas. The drashtu has a form. So it is Swarupe Avastha. It is in its own form. The Purush is a state within where we are now free of form. There is no form. So in our last talk, Patanjali had taken us through Vairagya, and now he's going to introduce us to Samadhi. And the first Samadhi he talks about is Samadhi with knowledge, Samadhi with knowing, Samadhi with cognition. Now, here I want to just say before going further that Tauriya Sahib has not taken this sutra number 17 in the first book. He has rearranged it and taken it right in the fourth book. So we can, in a way, understand that this is a very deep sutra because Tauriya Sahib has rearranged this sutra. Another thing is that we will go through this sutra in the traditional way just now as we see it. But later on, I would also like to explain why Tauriya Sahib rearranged it, put it right in book 4, and try to give a little exposition of Tauriya Sahib's brain diagrams and how this sutra relates to his brain diagrams. So, I mean, if we can finish this sutra today, then maybe we could take that in the next session. Now, each moment, the five senses, through the five senses, what we call as reality, it flows in through the five senses and appears on the screen of the chitta, the screen of the mind inside. But by the time we recognize that reality, there is cognition, because he calls this Samadhi with cognition. By the time we recognize that reality, it has passed through so much of scenery within us. And what we recognize and what we see is not really what has come in through the senses. And is there a way to bring the mind to such a state that it directly sees what the senses have brought in without the action of any inner condition? And this will be a very high step for us in consciousness. And this sutra today, which we are going to talk about, is the process of the cleansing of the mind. So today he is going to talk about how to clean the mind. Where do we start? How do we go about it? It's a very practical sutra. Now, we can take it in another way, that we all have a beautiful diamond, but And that diamond is our mind. But that diamond is not free of its matrix. We have to carve out that diamond from its matrix. The diamond has to be carved out of the matrix and it has to be polished. So most of us go through life without realizing that we have this diamond within us called the mind. And that this diamond can be worked upon. This diamond can be cut in a proper way. The impurities can be got rid of. And then this diamond can be polished and will shine. And when that diamond shines, it is not just my personal mind. It becomes a part of something which Mr. Tawaria Sahib called the universal mind. The universal mind, which he called the mind of God, it does not have a beginning and it does not have an end. Our mind has a beginning and it has an end. So our mind is individual mind. Right? Universal mind is free of time. Our mind is bound in time. It is bound by our feelings. It is bound by our thoughts. And our thoughts being digital, it gives us a feeling of time. It is bound by our sensations. So if we can free this mind that from everything that it is bound with, then that pure diamond becomes a part of the universal mind. So in the universal mind, there are no limitations. But our mind is limited by the conditioning, our habits, our attitudes, our prejudices, our memory. It is limited by this. So in this sutra, he is going to talk about this cleaning of the mind and bringing the mind to such a state that we see reality with no interference of memory at all. But still there is knowledge of reality. There is the knowledge of cognition of reality. What happens when we see reality directly through the senses without any inner condition? Then suddenly what we see takes on a different dimension of being alive. I say this is a chair, but this chair is a dead thing. But when this chair comes in, suddenly the chair starts becoming alive inside, because now there is no conditioning that this is a chair. Suddenly I see the aspiration of the person who designed the chair, that he wanted to provide something for man's comfort where he could relax with something. I see the chair in time. So when things come in through the five senses, without any interference of our conditioning, suddenly they become alive. They sort of move into a higher dimension of time where they are speaking to us, they're telling us about themselves. So we'll just take a look at this sutra. Now, there are two readings of this sutra. Tawaria Sahib has taken one reading. I'm going to take another reading, and then later on when we explain Tawaria Sahib's commentary on this sutra, we'll take the other reading. So the sutra goes, Vitarka, Vichara, Ananda, Asmita, Rupa, Anugamata, Sampragnata. Now, so this is a reading with the word Rupa. I'll just highlight the word Rupa, right over here, Rupa. And The reading which Tawariya Sahib has taken is Vitarka, Vichara, Ananda, Asmita, Anugamata, Samprajnat. He has not taken the word Rupa. And so this is one sutra in Patanjali for which there are two separate readings. Now, it is saying that this samadhi, sampragnata samadhi, or we can say the nirodh with samprajna, the nirodh with thought, the nirodh with knowledge, it, what do you call, it is made of four things, or we can say five things. And those are vitarka, that is right reasoning. Now the word vi over here. Yeah. No, the people were, yeah, please. Now, the word vi has multiple meanings, so we are taking the meaning here to mean distinct, to think, and tark means to think distinctly, right? Vitarka. Now, the next word is vichara, which actually means thought. So we say the first means to think, the process of thinking, and the outcome of the process of thinking, vichara, thought. But here again, he has used the same prefix, vi, to mean distinct, and char. Char means to move. I don't know what they say in Hindi, but in Gujarati we say ke gai charwa gai. It has gone to graze. So when a cow or a goat goes to graze, the word used is char. It has gone charwa gai. It is to move. So char comes from the word move, to move, to mean to move, right? Next is Anand. Anand. You're putting this in between, I can't see the Anand. Anand means to be happy, but Nand means to be happy. Anand, to be happy from all sides. If we could take this a little deeper, we could say to be happy in our thinking, to be happy in our feeling, to be happy in our sensations, and to be happy in our movements, in our muscles. So the first word is to reason, to think. The second is the outcome, thought. The third is Anand. Asmita. Asmi means I am, right? The amness, I amness, right? The feeling of I that I have. And this is something which forms a part of our sadhana, of our, what do you call, work upon self. What is the feeling of I? And this feeling of I changes all the time, right? If my son passes the exam, there is a different feeling of I. But if my son fails in the exam, there is a different feeling of I. If I have a lot of money, there is a different feeling of I. If there is no money, then there is a different feeling of I. But Asmita means that feeling of I which is not dependent upon anything, the original feeling of I, the I amness. So Asmita, Rupa means form, Anugamat, to follow, to go along with, right? So that samadhi which goes along with these four or these five, that samadhi is called as Sampragnat samadhi. So this is the sutra. Now the first word, vitarka. Tark, to think. Vitarka, to think distinctly, to think in a different way, to think higher. Now, one of the parts of work upon self or sadhana, inner sadhana, is a long process of observation of our thinking, observation of our thoughts. And if we do observe for some time, we may come to some resultant insight within us. Do we really think, or are we thought? Do we think our thoughts, or do thoughts come to us? And we will see that our mind is more or less a chaos of thoughts, a chaos of feelings, a chaos of sensations with no order inside. So what happens when an impression comes in? Say an impression of a tree, when it comes in, does it fall on the mind directly? Or is there an association of memory in between? And does that memory take that to a special spot where we find meaning in what has come in? So there is something within us which gives meaning to the impression. A simple example is that someone insults me, that impression comes in, an association takes that memory to a place within. Gurdjieff calls this an I, because there are so many I's within us. And that I gives a meaning to the impression that this is an insult, this is somebody has treated me badly, right? And I react to that. So man lives by meaning. Man lives by meaning. We're going to go into this. And when we are observing our thoughts, we will ask ourselves, can we change the meaning? Is there a process of changing the meaning? So this process of changing the meaning, using our reasoning capacity, using our logical capacity, using logic to bring out higher meaning in something is vitarka. To use the thinking process to bring out higher meaning. Now, all meaning that comes to us comes to our level of being, as per our level of being, as per our consciousness. As we rise in consciousness, we change the meaning. Now, if we were to observe our thoughts, I'll go into this a little later. If we were to observe our thoughts, we would see that we really don't think at all. Everything is ready-made inside. He says this, it goes to a ready-made answer inside, a ready-made meaning. This is called insult. He does this, right? It goes to a ready-made area. This is called coming late. He does this, right? Right. This is what we call putting me down, etc., etc. So our mind, our brain is inlaid with fixed pathways, and all the impressions which come from outside follow these fixed pathways, and they are a whole library of ready-made, meanings. It labels that which comes from outside, and we think we have thought nothing. We have just added a ready-made label. So these are fixed patterns, and they have overlaid the mind right from a young age, or maybe we could say for thousands of years. And all our thinking moves along these fixed patterns. And we want to, free the mind from these fixed patterns. So he says the first way of freeing the mind is vitarka. Now, there are three types of thinking. Tarka, to think, logic, reasoning, Kutarka, negative thinking, negative reasoning, right? And many people are very expert at this negative reasoning. And they have fixed pathways in the brain, fixed pathways in the mind. The minute you say anything, they have all kinds of logic to destroy what you're saying. So I'll say, Pavaria Sahib's exercises are very good and you should practice them. They calm the mind, etc., etc. And they have it ready made inside, you know. Show me one person whose mind has calmed down till now, right? And thousands of people have been doing these exercises. They still fight with their wives every day, right? And what are you saying? So this is negative logic, negative reasoning. And you cannot argue with a person who is in negative reasoning. No argument will work there. You have to step aside. And it is only when he comes out of his negativity that you can maybe, you know, tell him something, right? Which is very rare. In the Mahabharata, we have a character called Karna. And as long as Karna is on his chariot, you cannot kill Karna. It's not possible to kill Karna. So Karna has to come down from his chariot. Karna means the one who listens, the ears, right? So we listen with the ears and we argue immediately, right? And here's this character in the Mahabharata. And Krishna knows that this person can't be killed on the chariot. And he waits till his chariot is stuck in the ground, and then he comes down from the chariot and he tells Arjuna, now is the chance, you killed him. Now, it's a beautiful story over here. We just go a little bit in the story, then we go further. All meaning in life, from lowest to highest, comes from one ultimate meaning. In the universal mind, there is one ultimate artha, what we call it, one ultimate meaning, and that is everyone is divine, right? And it is from that ultimate meaning that all meaning descends. And when I say that you have insulted me, you have treated me badly, I am bringing that highest meaning which is lying in universal mind, that artha which is divine, to the lowest possible category. I hope I'm coming across it. The meaning which I'm taking out of the impression of your insulting me is bringing out the lowest, whilst what has come in also has that highest meaning. That impression which has come in, and it is this process of cleaning the mind where we move from lower meaning to higher meaning to higher meaning to ultimate meaning. From individual mind to higher mind to universal mind. Now, Karna was born as Suryaputra. So he was born in the highest, but he was raised as Sutputra. He was raised as a child. Don't take Sut as a caste. I'm not talking about caste over here, please. Otherwise, it could be taken in a mistaken way. He was born the highest, but he was raised in the lowest. All meaning comes from the highest. Do we raise it in the lowest? Do we bring it down to the lowest level? Then what have we lived in our lives? Every moment, if I bring out the meaning of everything that comes in with my selfish I, with my selfish ego, then that ultimate meaning I bring, that Surya Putra, I am raising it to be a Sutputra. So When an impression comes in, it falls on something called an association, and we have to change these associations. These associations are mechanical. These associations are devoid of consciousness, and we consciously create new pathways, consciously create new associations, and this process is called vitarka. Now, we will see over a period of observation that we have fixed habits of thinking. We don't even realize it, that we think habitually. Now, supposing I feel dislike for something, or I feel resentment about something, then I may be cultured outside, so I don't show it outside, but definitely within myself, I flare up. Now, within myself, there's a shot of adrenaline. I get angry within myself. And this is a fixed pattern inside, that whenever I don't like something, whenever I feel resentment in life, this spike in electricity within me, it happens automatically. And especially when personal emotions come in. How dare he talk of my mother like this? How dare he talk about my guru like this? Where personal emotions come in, we take that impression, we flare up inside, and we take that impression to the lowest level inside. Now, these are fixed pathways. Can you understand? They happen so automatically. And to clean the mind, to redo all these roads inside, overlay the old roads and make new roads inside. This is a long process of self-observation. Many times we can see that we are thinking about something. We may be concentrating on something, thinking about something. It could be some news. It could be we are trying to understand a painting or something. And in between, somebody says something which we don't like, or we feel resentment. Our whole thinking process is broken, and we again go back to the reaction in resentment. And all this has to be observed within ourselves. So as we observe our thinking process, we will see how we react to people's opinions, especially the opinion of the wife, right? And we will see we always react in the same fixed ways. Supposing someone has a pattern where he automatically disagrees with everything that somebody else says. And people love this. They get a shot of adrenaline when they can, break your logic, and it is a wrong rus, what we call. It is a wrong taste which we get, but we enjoy that taste. I broke his logic, I destroyed his logic. So they love to disagree, and we cannot see that the ego is getting inflated in this, that the self-love is getting inflated in this. I don't know, many of us may have seen a young child. Some children, they love to break toys. They love to break plates. And when you see another person destroying somebody else's opinion, destroying his logic, and you can see a young child breaking toys, breaking plates, this guy is not grown up. So it's that same pattern which was formed in childhood is repeating and repeating again. Many of us have patterns of defensive thinking. And when somebody says something, we go on the defensive. We don't want anyone to know anything about ourselves. Many of us have a pattern where we cannot face a challenge in life. And the second one goes very deep. Many of us just don't like to be criticized. The minute somebody criticizes us, we feel as if a spear has gone into us, an arrow has gone into us, and we want to give it back. We really want to give it. And all these are fixed patterns. Many of us live in an aura of failure. Whenever you say, okay, will you please do this? Oh, I can't do this. You see, it's not possible. We live in this aura of failure. Many people you see that they have everything in life, maybe money and whatever the comfortable things in life, but they still cannot enjoy life. They have an inbuilt negative attitude towards life. And they live their whole life with all this money and everything in this negative attitude. Many of us have a kind of conditioned aim in life. Somebody has to work for the downtrodden. So he will see every impression which comes in through that which is work. Somebody wants to work to save the environment. So everything that comes in, he will see through the glasses of the environment. And we see this mind of ours is in this whole matrix. We can hardly see the diamond. It is covered with so much of dirt inside. And it is this matrix which we have to cut open and polish. So the first is to think in a different way. So there are two kinds of thinking. That which leads to a higher state of consciousness, that which leads to a deeper state of understanding, that which leads to an inner evolution, and there is kutarka, negative reasoning, negative logic, which leads us to lower states of consciousness, which instead of leading us to inner evolution, it involves us, it identifies us more into the sleep of life. Now, I suppose Patanjali is, he has been talking right from Chitta Vritti Nirodha to Abhyas to Vairagya. So definitely when he has come to this sutra number 17, Vitarka, he would presume or he would assume that our minds have calmed down a little. We are observing what is going on inside, right? We are trying to work upon our mechanical reasoning. It is not just happening automatically. Now, this vitarka, there is always a conscious effort involved in it. And it always leads to a higher meaning. Last time, I think in the last talk or the talk before that, I had given one example that I got down at the airport, and when you get down in the US, there are huge lines, and it looked like it would take 3 hours to get through immigration. And the person who had come to pick me up, he sent me a message that you're going to get bored, the line is long. Now, I am bored, I am irritated. I see the line, the impression comes in. I am bored, I am irritated. And of course, the immigration people have no sense, right? So this is a lower meaning. This is a mechanical meaning which I'm automatically extracting from that. Now, if I can see this mechanical meaning And I say, wait, this is a good time to practice my power of endurance. This is a good time to see that in this, if the monkey remains calm, right? I will ask the monkey to remain calm. Can I remain in a state of deep relaxation through these 3 hours? So suddenly from lower meaning now, using the process of reasoning, I'm extracting a higher meaning of the same impression, the long line. Can you understand this, what I'm trying to say? And this can be done every moment in our life, right? And it is not something that we have to look for an opportunity to do it. I may go in the kitchen and the person who has washed the vessels, she has just left the cup on the edge like this. And I come and I touch it and the cup falls down and breaks. Now the immediate reaction, the mechanical reaction, which is the lowest meaning I can take out of this, is she doesn't know what she's doing. She has to keep the cup inside. And I complain about the way she washes my vessels or whatever the thing is. Now, I've taken a very lower mechanical meaning, but I bring in consciousness. I pause over there and I say, is there a higher meaning in this? Is there a way to see this in a different way? Can I see the life of the cup? Maybe in time, the death of the cup was written somewhere in time, right? So when we use logic and reasoning, tarka, to reach a higher level of meaning, this is called as vitarka. So the first process in the cleaning of the mind is vitarka. Now, you see, this will happen every day. Now, there could be old people in our house, and many times old people, they cannot change. They become fixed in life. So when we look at some of their, tendencies, maybe there is one tendency where they repeat everything 5 times. Simple thing, I'm sure this happens in many of our homes, right? So they come and tell you something and they don't remember that they've told you this, so they tell it to you again, and they tell it to you again, and they tell it to you again. Now, I'm getting irritated. Right? So if I'm extracting irritation from this, then I'm definitely extracting a low meaning. Bring in consciousness, right? Again, here is a test of my power of endurance. Can I rise above this? Can I see why this is mechanically happening? Can I see this person in time? Can I have compassion for this person? So we use reasoning to move away from the mechanical automatic reaction to a higher level of meaning. And meaning is everything in life. I run after money because I see meaning in money. Maybe in college, I ran after beautiful girls because I saw meaning in beautiful girls, right? I run after knowledge because I see meaning in knowledge. You all are sitting over here because you see meaning in sitting over here, right? In life, meaning is everything. Earth is everything in life, right? And there are when we understand that there are different levels of meaning, and we can work upon the meaning to transform the lower meaning into higher meaning, suddenly we realize what path our sadhana should take, what path our efforts should take. We can now say, we were to say, one of Gurdjieff's main sayings is non-expression of negative emotions. So all reactions are negative. And Gurdjieff says that there is a higher emotional center and there's an ordinary lower emotional center. And the higher emotional center has a different meaning. There's different meaning lying over there, different understanding lying over there. But as long as we have negative emotions in our emotional center, as long as there is a negative part of our emotional center, we cannot contact the higher emotional center. We have to cut this out. So on the spiritual path, the ticket to sit in the spiritual bus, in the spiritual journey, is non-expression of negative emotions. All inner mechanical reactions lead to negative emotions. And we use a new form of reasoning to take us away from the negative emotion, to rise higher in consciousness. And as the negative emotion, slowly we don't become a victim of that negative emotion. It cuts away and we are free of it. So what are the characteristics of lower meaning in our life, of negative emotions in our life? Complaining. I don't know, I think in the first talk I had said that when I met Tauriya Sahib, he said in a student's dictionary, please cancel the word complaining. A student of spirituality is not allowed to complain about anything, right? So what leads us to lower meaning? Complaining, right? Denying all the time, finding faults all the time, justification of our mechanicalness all the time, wrong arguments. All this leads to seduction of attention and identification. It does not allow us to remain in the present moment, in the here and now. So when we are using vitarka, the first thing is we come into the present moment. We see that how we have reacted in the present moment, or we see how we are now reacting in the present moment. We pause that mechanical reaction and we extract, we move to a higher state of consciousness. We rise in our being, we rise up by extracting new meaning. And in this, we have created a new pathway in the mind. We have created a new pathway in the brain. The impression has not gone along the old pathway. It has gone along a new pathway. We are now consciously creating new habits of the mind, which are consciously created habits. So vitarka is always relating to the object in the present moment. The conscious effort to change the pathway. The right use of logic to achieve something higher. Not only do we extract higher meaning, but the intensity is more. It is more meaningful. Supposing I've been doing Tauriya Sahib's exercises for 6 months. Then after 6 months, I may be able to say to someone, I find the exercises more meaningful. Not just one meaning, more meaningful. I said the exercises have become rich in meaning. So it is not just the extraction of the higher meaning, but life becomes more meaningful. The richness of life increases. Now, as long as we have these characteristics in our life of denying, of complaining, finding faults, we can never find Anand. Vitarka, Vichara, Anand. It is not possible. It is not. If I'm negative all the time, how can I reach a state of Anand? How can I reach a state of bliss? It is not possible. So unless that is transformed to something higher, which leads me to that state of. So we live by meaning, and there are different levels of meaning, right? I got married because I found meaning in getting married. And we must observe each moment where our ego is taking us. In this moment, if I'm aggressive about my point of view, my opinion, then even if my opinion is very correct, right? Because I'm aggressive, it is from the ego, it is not real. The very aggressive, the tone of voice, So all this has to be observed. The tone, many people live in a very low tone of voice. Whenever they speak as if the tragedy is happening in their lives or there's self-pity in their lives. So all this meaning does not mean just the words, the impression. It means how we are reacting inside, how we are responding inside. And we must understand that even a person who commits suicide, he commits suicide because he's finding some meaning in that committing suicide. Even at that level, there is meaning in life. Right? Now, the minute we start practicing this, using logic to find higher meaning in life, using vitarka, the thinking process, something in us starts growing, and this is the power of discrimination. Later on, we will see in higher sutras, in different sutras, that this power of discrimination flowers into something which Patanjali will call as viveka, viveka khyati, he'll call it. But here there is a discrimination that this is lower meaning and this is higher meaning, and I want to make an effort towards this higher meaning. This inner power of discriminating between the lower and higher, this inner power of being able to see that this is higher and this is lower, this is sat and this is asat, that grows within us as we start practicing. So we climb the ladder of being by pausing the mechanical, bringing in consciousness, finding higher earth. And this can lead not just to the impression which comes in. I'm picking up my cup. I can pick up my cup in an aggressive way. Then I'm in this holding of the cup, I'm finding lower meaning. I can pick up my cup in a very soft way. I'm finding higher meaning. So I shut the door. Am I shutting the door with lower meaning or am I shutting the door with higher meaning? Because when the impression falls directly on the mind without any association, the door becomes alive. And I don't want to push the door hard to shut the door. Suddenly the door has become alive. And so in each act of life, I am now finding higher meaning. So whenever we see we are in negative emotion, whenever we see we are mechanically reacting, we use this vitarka to change the track upon which we are acting. Now, let us talk about thinking a little, then go to the next one. There is thinking from the senses and there's thinking from the mind. Now, a young child thinks from the senses. His thinking is totally dependent upon the senses. But as we understand life, as we grow in life, we start thinking from the mind. We use the mind to think. Now, if I was to think from the senses, I would say there's nothing like God. God is a, what do you call, a hallucination, right? You show me proof that there is God and bring that proof so I can see it, right? So I'm thinking from my senses. And many people, they live their whole life at a very sensual level. They're not able to rise in the mind. They just eat, drink, and be merry. And so they live life at the level of the senses. But there's a different way of thinking, to think with the mind. When we see a detective serial, the detective is seeing what do you call, dead body in front of him. And the dead body is coming in as an impression through the five senses. But he is using the mind to think beyond the dead body. What is the cause of this murder? How has this murder happened? Similarly, on the spiritual path, we have to think from the mind. We cannot just think from the senses. So on this path of Vitarka, we open up those parts of the mind which till now have been sort of in suspension, sort of dormant. We'll just take a few examples. Now, say if I'm studying the Mahabharata. So at a sensual level, I will say Dhritarashtra is blind. He is blind from the eyes. And of course, he is blind from the eyes. It's shown in the serial, so he must have been. But at a higher level, I say he is blind to something else. He's blind to his attachments. He's blind to his selfishness. He's blind to his ego. Can we open that eye? So there are two ways of looking at Dhritarashtra. So when we study the Mahabharata, there is a sensual way of thinking the stories as the children would take it. And there is a different way of taking where we extract higher meaning, higher knowledge from the Mahabharata. Say we are studying the Ramayana. And we would say that the villain of the Ramayana is Kaikai. This is very obvious. She sent Ram into the, forest, right? And Ram should never have gone into the forest. And she did a very wicked thing, etc. And we could look at it with a different point of view, a higher meaning. Maybe she saw that Ram was not yet ready to rule. He had to go through an inner process of pain. He had to go through an inner process of suffering where the inner being would be heated and you're tempered into being ready to rule the people of Ayodhya. Right? So she consciously became a villain and she sent Ram into the forest. Now, these are two different ways of looking at the same. One is the sensual way, one is the way through the mind. Similarly, we could say, take the life of Jesus. Right? And we say Judas was the villain. Judas, he was treacherous and he was a traitor to Jesus. He gave up Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And there is another way to look at it. If there was no Judas, there would be no Christianity. It is because Christ died on the cross, there is Christianity. Did Christ whisper in Judas's ear, you have to play the part of villain? You have to hand me over? Now this is not sensual thinking. It is not thinking with the senses. We are trying to extract higher meaning. Or we could go to the Bible. We could say that Christ went for the wedding to Cana. And in the wedding in Cana, the wine got over. And the wine got over. And Christ put his hands on the, barrels of water. And the water turned into wine. So one way of looking at it is that definitely he had some miracle. And he turned the water into the wine. And one way is that the lower meaning is water, and each moment we can become Christ and transform lower meaning into higher meaning, which is wine. So there are two ways of looking at things. There is one way is through the senses, and one way is from the mind. When we are using Vitarka, we are making right use of the mind. We are rising higher in the mind. Now, the next word is vichar. Char means to graze. And vichar also means thoughts. Tarka, thinking. Vichar, thoughts. Now, what happens when the same thought repeats again and again? Supposing somebody comes to my home, and every time that person comes to my home, I have certain, what you call, I don't have good feelings about this person. So I have these vague feelings about this person who comes to my home. And every time I think of that person, this repeats. And that person comes, and again I have the same kind of feelings. And those feelings repeat. Now, supposing somebody comes and tells me that that person was caught in a fraud somewhere, right? So suddenly all these thoughts I've been having about that person will suddenly crystallize. I don't know if I'm coming across it. It will crystallize into a suspicion about that person. Now it is not a thought, it has become an attitude. Can you see how we create attitudes in the mind? You see, in chemistry, we have the process of crystallization, where in the process of crystallization, that which is left out in the sun, it crystallizes into a salt. It crystallizes into a salt. Similarly, this repeatedly thinking in the same pattern, repeatedly thinking about the same thing, at one point, it crystallizes into the salt on the diamond of the mind, and that becomes an attitude. Now it's going to be very difficult to remove that salt, to clean the diamond. I hope I'm coming. And we have innumerable attitudes which have all been formed in childhood. I see a person of another religion, immediately an attitude. I see a person of another caste, immediately an attitude. I see a person of another color, immediately an attitude. I see a person of some country, immediately an attitude. Faster than thought, because that attitude has been crystallized. The salt has now deposited on our mind. So vitarka is to pause the impression in such a way that we find higher meaning in the present moment, which are that which has already happened. I mean, so much of darkness we have lived through, so much of mechanicalness we have lived through, which has deposited what you call salts on our diamond of the mind. Cleaning those salts is vichar. Thinking in a different way, to graze in a different way. This word graze to charu, I don't know what they call it in Hindi, otherwise I would tell you. Where the cattle graze the fields. Huh? Same word. Charna, same word.
The same word, Rajen Vakil.
We say Krishna was born in Vraja. In Vraja. And Vraja also means to roam around, charu, where the cattle are grazing, the area where the cattle are grazing, right? And at present, all our thoughts are grazing in chaos. And when we study the Bhagavad, there is one portion of the Bhagavad which is very beautiful, and that is the Gopi Geet, where the gopis are singing to Krishna, right? And in those bhakti songs, it is as if the whole Upanishads are there in those few 14 to 16 songs which the gopis are singing. And the first song which the gopis sing, they say, with your descent in this area of Vraja, that which was, everything which was grazing chaotically suddenly has come in order. By you coming in, the goddess of power has come. The goddess of power is called as Indira. So they say by your entering, your descent into this land of Vraja, that your power has put everything in order. Are our thoughts in order? Or are our thoughts chaotic? Now, the observation of thought, we can come to a state where we are observing thoughts. Observation of attitudes is very difficult, very, very difficult. It takes many years of hard work on thought where we reach a state where we allow the attitudes to come into the light of our observation. People have so many attitudes. Someone may feel that he's not getting what he deserves in life. So that creates an attitude towards life. He lives through that attitude. And because he's not getting what he feels he's due in life, he may be suspicious to all the people he meets in life. Right? So he's living life through an attitude of suspicion. See, the wife lays the food on the table. Husband eats mechanically. And the wife is waiting for that one, that one word of appreciation of the food. And of course, the husband is bothered about what is happening in the office, or of course, what is happening on the national scene, all the news and all that. And all husbands are interested in the news, right? So he forgets to, and this is a form of self-forgetting. He forgets to appreciate the food. And this is repeated every day. And a point will come when it crystallizes into an attitude and the wife feels the husband is not appreciating me at all. And you can observe this in many places where we go. The attitude has been created. Now those attitudes, we are stuck in our attitudes. Our thinking is stuck in those attitudes. And this happens, right? The wife has a new haircut and the husband forgets to appreciate the new haircut. Or most common thing, he forgets to wish the wife on her birthday, right? So these things happen. Maybe I'm talking through experience, I don't know. So now just imagine, every day I'm not appreciating the food. And one day I suddenly remember to appreciate the food. She's going to look at that through suspicion. The attitude has been created. The attitude has been created. We are always comparing. One of the, characteristics of a lower form of thinking is all thoughts have a part which is comparison. There is comparison in each. Actually, we cannot think without comparing. Let us put it in another way. Higher thinking, there is no comparing. There is relativity. There is relativity. So, and when we compare ourselves to other people, then it leads to an inner state of dissatisfaction. And that inner state of dissatisfaction then crystallizes into an attitude. I may feel others are selfish, right? I may feel nobody talks about me. And I start making accounts that I did so much for you. You never did anything for me. When you were ill, I came to your home and I looked after you for 5 days. When I was ill, you forgot to even phone me also, right? And we start calculating in life. This mind starts making accounts. And once the mind starts making accounts in life, that mind can never be happy. It's not possible. We can never find happiness. So in Vichara, we start observing our thoughts and we try to transform those thoughts from thoughts which are full of negativity into thoughts which are free of negativity. And in that, we are slowly working on the attitude which we cannot see. Now, it is difficult to observe the thoughts. And so that is why three-step rhythmic breathing plays a very, very important part. We must practice three-step rhythmic breathing. If the breathing is in rhythm, there is a slowing down of thoughts. There is no spike of negative emotions. And in that, we have a platform to observe our thoughts, to observe the quality of our thoughts. And as we observe the quality of our thoughts, negative thoughts start transforming into something higher. Over a period of time, as we observe our thoughts, moments will come when we are standing so silent in the mind. We may be surrounded by thoughts, but we are just standing there as a witness. And in that moment where no thought can cling to us, to the person who is watching those thoughts, there will be a moment of bliss, moment of rising into Anand, as if Anand is coming from all the sides around me. There will be a moment of moving into that higher part. But again, we'll come back. Now, let us just go to the difference between a thought and attitude. Say a person in his very young days, something happens and he's hurt, somebody hurt him at school, or somebody bullied him at school, or maybe the parents were not looking after him properly, right? And he suddenly, in his young days, he suddenly develops an attitude where he's suspicious of other people. He cannot trust other people. And this attitude gets crystallized. Now, he may grow up to have a lot of money, to have a good life. He may have a lot of friends who also love him a lot, right? But somewhere in the background, this attitude will be working that he cannot, and he will not know about it. But somewhere he will feel with everything, something is missing. Some happiness is missing, and that is because of the attitude. And these attitudes are, like I said, are crystallized salt on the diamond of the mind. So we first observe our thoughts. We get moments of silence where we are suddenly above our thoughts and we experience a kind of bliss inside, vitarka, vichara, ananda. Over a period of time, we clean up all the old thoughts which we have had for so long, and the mind is literally clean. And slowly our attitudes start coming into our, what you call, focus. And as we observe our attitudes, that crystallization of salts, which is on the diamond of the mind, starts, what you call, dissolving, and the diamond starts coming out of its matrix, fully powerful with all its shine and luster. Now, the first step we took was vitarka, right logic, right reasoning to move higher. The second was vichar. In vichar, we started with observation of thought, standing silently in the thoughts, and being free of attitudes, removing the dust of the old attitudes. But there is still one more step in vichar, and that is every thought we have, not a single one is free of this, is somehow tinged by our ego, somehow tinged by our self-love. And we now have come to a state within ourselves where we are free of attitudes, we observe our thoughts clearly, and we start separating the ego from the thought. We start separating the I from the thought. This is a very long process. It may take years, a few years. Most yogis don't want to go through this process, so they directly go to a state of thoughtlessness without cleaning the thought. They enter into a state of nirvichar, and that is not the right way of doing the journey. You have to move through. Each thought has a little, what we call tinge, a coloring of the ego, a coloring of our self-love. And we separate that self-love from the thought. I have said this before, I'm just repeating it. That one of the experiments which Tavaria Sahib gave me was not to use the word I for 6 months. So each moment I had to, rearrange my thinking in a way where I don't use the word I. So if I said, I'm coming to your home, I would have to take out the I and say, will be coming to your home, right? And I would have to answer you on the phone that way because I'm not allowed to use the word I. And as we practice this, we find so many ways of not using the word I. So in our speaking, in our vani, in our speaking, there is a change where personal thinking comes out. It is no longer personal. We are talking of moving from individual mind to universal mind. We have to drop the person here. Dropping the person here means dropping the ego here. Otherwise, we cannot merge into that universal mind. So there is a whole process where we look at our thoughts. Here I'm looking at what I'm speaking. Here I'm looking at how I'm creating the thought in the mind. And if I can practice this a little deeper, then every thought where I see the I is involved, I recreate the thought with the absence of I. Even then, there is a slight tinge of ego always left. We cannot be free of that totally, but suddenly our thoughts over a period of time are free of self-love, free of ego. And this is a very big step. Now the diamond is totally free of all the dirt which has collected for centuries. Now the diamond is not bound by time. It is not, it is not bound by imperfections. So this conscious practice of thinking a thought without self-love, without ego, as it was the conscious practice of speaking a thought without using the word I. We have just taken the same practice to a higher level. And in that, the diamond is free. And in that moment of diamond being free, suddenly there is bliss, ananda, bliss from all sides. It comes in. There is happiness from all sides. There is a feeling of ecstasy from all sides. And we'll just touch on the Latin root of the word ecstasy. The Latin root of the word ecstasy means to be standing outside yourself. In this whole process of observing ourselves, we find ourselves standing outside ourselves, as if we have created a new body standing outside ourselves. Gurdjieff calls this the creation of the astral body. And suddenly we are standing outside, observing ourselves. And this standing outside is called as ecstasy. Vitarka, vichara, ananda. But the next is asmita. Now, when we study the Yoga Sutras, we will see that this word asmita comes at two places. Here, Patanjali is talking as asmita as a samadhi. when he will talk about klesha, klesha, we talked about klishta or aklish, with klesha, without klesha, when we talked about vritti. And in the second chapter, he'll be talking about klesha. Kleshas are the seeds of karma. It is out of klesha that karma arises. So when we talk about klesha, we will also go into his sutras of karma. What is the meaning of karma? Right? How is karma created? Right? So in that, one of the seeds of karma is also asmita. So there he's talking of the using the same word asmita as a klesh. Here he is using the same word asmita as a samadhi. The word is the same. Of course, the meaning will be totally different in both the cases, right? So, so he's saying vitarka, right reasoning, vichara, what do you call, upgrading of thought, distinct thought, think in a different way, ananda, freeing the mind, asmita. When there is anand, when there is bliss, there is still the feeling of I, that I am blissful. Right? Now, try to understand the feeling of I. Our whole journey is nothing but changing the feeling of I. I have a lot of money, my feeling of I. I have a lot of power, my feeling of I. Can you see, I'm taking my feeling of I from something outside, from maybe I have a lot of power, I control so many people, right? So I'm taking my feeling of I from that. Or I may say I have a lot of knowledge, right? So I'm taking my feeling of I from the knowledge I have. So whenever I'm taking, or like I said, when we were in college, we used to run behind beautiful girls. And if we had a beautiful girl to show to the other guys that I'm taking my feeling of I from a beautiful girl. So whenever we are taking the feeling of I from something outside, it is always false. It is always false, right? I may build a new home, a beautiful home, and I may call all my friends to come and visit the new home. And here I'm taking my feeling of I from my new home as my friends come and they praise the beauty of my new home. And you see, I'm taking my feeling of I from something outside. As we grow on the path, on the spiritual path, the feeling of I starts moving in. The feeling of I. And we saw now I'm taking my feeling of I by reasoning in a different way. A new way of reasoning. I'm taking my feeling of I by finding a new meaning in life, by rising to higher levels of meaning. I'm taking my feeling of I from vichar, from a distinct way of thinking, from a thinking which is free of negativity. I'm taking my feeling of I from a way of thinking which is free of self-love, free of ego. So, and then comes where the diamond is totally free. The mind is now, it is the universal mind, but still the individual mind. It is like a pot of water which is in the river being the universal mind. But initially the water in the pot was dirty. The water in the pot is cleaned up. It is the same water as the river, but still he uses one word at the end, rupa. There is a form behind that pot of water, but it has now got all the properties of the universal mind. It has left all the properties of the individual mind. There is a thin form surrounding that pot of water. So vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita, rupa, anugamata, samprajna. That small outline of form still remains. So ananda, but then asmita, I am feeling blissful. And suddenly he realizes that I'm taking this feeling of I, even though blissful is my innermost state, but still for that I, it is still something outside. I don't know if I'm coming across here. You know, one of the when we were talking with Tauriya Sahib. And we would say the path inwards is to take attention inwards. And as we take attention inwards, we slowly uncover the layers of the onion, our inner state, our inner associations, our inner thoughts, our inner habits, our inner attitudes. One layer by layer, and the attention goes deeper inside. And as we were talking about this, he came out with one statement. Attention can never go inside, it always goes outside. And this is the way a master works. This is the way a teacher works. He loves to confuse the disciple. He loves to confuse. He used to tell me, my only aim is to confuse you more. And then we realize that I am now in a negative state. I've taken my attention inside. I realize I'm in a negative state. And when I'm observing that negative state, my attention is moving out. It is not moving in. That negative state is now outside. When I see my own inner, associations, the inner, links of memory, which decode the impressions from outside, I first put attention to them, then attention is going in. But at one point when I'm observing them with attention, there's something outside. And slowly, to attention, everything is outside, nothing is inside. And here we are in this state of bliss, this state of inner ecstasy, vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita. So between that anand and asmita, suddenly we realize that this feeling of I, the attention has moved now totally inside, and it is looking at bliss also as something outside. It is looking at bliss as something outside. And he says, I am blissful. I don't want to have the feeling of I through bliss. What is my real feeling of I? Drop the bliss also, and just the inner amness remains. Not I am blissful, just I am. And that I am, that feeling of real I inside, not dependent even upon ananda, not dependent even upon bliss. That vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita, that I, it is just a pure amness. There is no I left to be, which needs something to stand upon, which needs a support of something outside to stand upon. And there is just a form of the mind, rupa anugama, a simple form of the mind. And that form is just the covering that this is the water of the river. This is the water in the pot, but the water in the pot is the water of the river. It is no longer distinct from the water of the river. It no longer has its impurities. It is free of impurities. It now has all the properties of the river. It is free of time. It is free of imperfections. It is omnipotent. It is omniscient. It has taken on all the properties of universal mind. That form remains, rupa anugama. And it is, so Patanjali has taken us through this process of inner cleaning of the mind. He starts with reasoning, with thought, right? And he moves us to higher levels where we are free of the ego. And then we drop even the anand, the happiness which comes out of this. And at that moment, we are no longer an I. There is just the amness. And in this state, when something an impression comes from outside, we see that impression in a different way. When we talk about Tauriya Sahib's interpretation of this sutra, he's talking about how we see that impression, which we are going to take next time. And next time, I'm also going to talk on the final word, rupa. What is the meaning of form? Where form comes from? What creates form? We will talk about it next time. Right? So I'll stop over here. If anybody wants to ask any questions, you can ask me.
Can I ask a question, please? May I ask a question? Please.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, there are a few questions I had. When you're talking about attitude. Now, when a small child, very small child has attitude, does it come from the past life?
Oh, now you're asking a big question. When a child is born, he's free of all attitudes.
Okay.
What comes from the past life is inclination.
Is
Inclination.
inclination. Okay.
That is the possibility of thought, the possibility of action, the possibility of feeling, the possibility of attitude. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, we are old now, but when we were young children, we used to have a drawing book. I don't know if they have the same kind of drawing books today. And the drawing book would have a page, like with different numbers in it. Right? Now, if you draw 1, 15, 40, this, that, then you would get owl. But if you draw 1, 40, 60, this, you would get lion.
Hello?
So when a child is born, all these numbers are there. All these numbers are there.
Okay.
And in the upbringing, we start joining the numbers. Did you get it? So around 4 to 5 years, the numbers are joined. Oh, he's a lion. Oh, he's a jackal. Oh, he's an owl. Can you see which numbers have been joined?
Yeah.
But the difference is that in the book, all the numbers have equal potency. Whilst in the child, some numbers have a higher potency and some numbers have a lower potency.
Okay.
But still, if the parents are very, what you call, conscious parents, they see that by the actions of the child, they see which potencies are higher and they don't allow water to go into certain numbers. Right?
Yeah.
So they bring up the child in a certain way that they are able to connect little numbers, which brings about a little higher personality than a lower personality, which is formed around 4 to 5 years old. Right?
Okay.
So from the past life, we get all these numbers. Each number has a sort of intensity of inclination. And what we draw out of those numbers is our personality.
All right. Okay. So it's not karmic. Is this karmic?
Yeah, the intensity is karmic.
Karmic. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank
Intensity
you.
is karmic. You see, I may have an intensity more towards anger.
Yeah.
Somebody else may have an intensity more towards cunningness.
Yeah.
Right? So then the jackal will come out. But more toward anger, then a mad dog will come out. Right?
Okay.
You get what I'm trying to say. Now the parents, they see which intensities and they don't give water to certain intensities and they give nourishment to other intensities. So they get the exact picture. Right? So nowadays, if you see many upbringing, they want to bring in arts and crafts and, so that certain intensities don't, are not given water and certain higher intensities are given water. There's a science of upbringing which is being followed these days. They make the children listen to music, they make him do different arts and crafts and things like that.
Yeah.
They're trying to, make the picture at 5 years that this picture they want. Right?
Yeah.
But the child is a clean slate. Nothing yet has been drawn on that slate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I teach in the schools, volunteering, and that's what and there's now
observe movement, you have to observe gestures of the young children. That tells you the intensities of that. Which intensities are predominant and which are not predominant, and which can be made predominant, and those predominant which you would like to make a little lesser. Right?
Okay, well, if you keep on praising the child and he has attitude, it'll grow more. That's what I've noticed. So we should not praise the child.
No, you have a discrimination of what to praise and what not.
Okay. All
See,
right.
one of the beautiful statements in the Bhagavad Gita is when, Krishna tells Arjun that those who have come to fight for Duryodhana have come to please him. I will not tell you anything to please you. I will tell you what is right. There are two words which Krishna uses: pray to please and shray as right. मैं जो कहूँगा तुम्हारे श्रेय में है. Are we doing for the shray of the child or pray of the child? If you remember these two words, everything is there in that.
Yeah, wonderful.
Are you doing it for the good of the child, or are you doing it to please the child?
That's true. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Amazing.
I mean, if you listen to the news today, it's, I mean, a very current topic. Has he done it to please the child, or has he done it to for the good of the child?
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Very current news, right?
Yeah. That's, one more question. Can I ask, or
Yeah.
is it okay? Please. About the Anand, is this to do with the koshas, the Anandmay kosha, the sheets?
Yes, very much, very much, very much. Why is it stopped?
Around the body, the Gyanmay kosha, Anandmay.
It
Yeah.
has
Is
a-
it related to the?
It is related. It is related. We will go through the koshas one. Right? I can't talk about them now.
Koshas?
No, her
Sorry, I don't know.
your
Yeah,
internet
yes,
is
you know the five.
your internet is interrupting. I think. Not our side.
Five sheets around our body.
Yeah, we'll go into that.
Is it related to the koshas?
It is definitely related. It is definitely related. Yeah, but I won't go into it today. Anyone else?
Any more questions, please? You can unmute yourself.
I don't think there are. No more questions. Huh? No. Is there any on the net? No, there are no questions on the net also today, sir.
Sir, can I ask something, sir? Nazia.
Yeah, please do. Please.
Sir, it is about I amness, Asmita. So as long as there is spot, there is I.
As long as there is
As long as there is spot, there is I. Right? Pot in the
She's
sense when
referring
you
to
said
the pot.
water.
Pot in the water. That the analogy
Is
that
this-
you gave. She's referring to the pot.
thought,
in the
not
water.
you're thinking. Thought.
Pot. Water in the pot and water in the liver.
Ha.
So if we say as long as there is spot, there is I.
Can we take this in a different way? See, the final exercise which we are doing is observing thoughts and rethinking thoughts without I. Right? So we are on this process of dissolving the I. We are in this process, right? So if we say we are dissolving self-love, right? Vitarka vichara, we are dissolving self-love. Then we are dissolving self, what remains? No, if we are working with our ego and we call our ego as self-love, right? If we dissolve the self, what remains?
Nothing. Like
Love.
love. Okay.
You get it?
So only water. So that's what I mean. That the reality.
The energy of love remains.
Yes. So it's only water.
Can you see? Just try to understand this. Just try to understand this. Anything you touch with the energy of love, what is the feeling?
It will be love. It will reciprocate love.
Ananda.
Yes, Anand, joy. Yes.
Ananda.
Yes.
See, let's take Krishna and Radha. Now, when he was 11 years old, Krishna went away. And he left Radha. Right? Now, initially, she would go to the places where they met and they would sit. Right? And she would relive those moments. And there would be this yearning for Krishna, this pull of Krishna. Can you see? What in the Bhakti yogis call as virha. The virha. Then she suddenly started dissolving the I in the virha. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? In this pull that she wants to meet Krishna, she would dissolve the I, let her I dissolve it. She would surrender to that pull. Over a period of time, if Krishna had come back, he would have upset her whole sadhana. Can you understand? So now Krishna should not come back. Only then she will rise to a higher this thing. Because now she was dissolving the I. Only the virha remained. And in that virha, there is joy. There is anand in that. Right? So when we are on this path of this conscious effort, in each thought, in each action, in each speaking, we dissolve the ego. Right? We dissolve the self. And on the dissolving of the self, what remains is love. And then this sensitivity of love, when it comes in your speaking, when it comes in your touch, when it comes in your looking, the byproduct is anand. So either there is anand and the byproduct is love, or there is love and the byproduct is anand, whichever way you want to put it, but there is no I. There is no I. But there is some kind of form, and that form could become an I again, but that form is devoid of anything personal, no I which is personal.
So that form can change itself. It can change forms. Like when we love someone, like then we think from the perspective of that person, we become that person. So maybe it can change forms, as I understand.
Now we'll do this in your way, not in my way, not in what I'm saying, where you said we love someone, right? Supposing I fall in love with someone, too old to fall in love with anyone, but supposing I fall in love with someone, right? And then I have say a teacher next to me, a master next to me. And he tells me that more important than the person you love, more important than the person you love is the energy of love. You see, I have not done any sadhana to reach that energy of love. It has happened automatically in my life because I love someone. In that loving of someone, my ego has dissolved a little. Now I am not selfish. What is important to me? I am in this, what do you call, emotion of love. What is important to her? She is more important than me. Can you see there has been a small dissolution in my ego, even in this normal feeling of love? We are not talking about Yoga Sutra. This is ordinary love.
There is no I. In that moment, there is no I. In that
moment, the I has dissolved. There is I, but it has dissolved a little.
Yes.
Now my guru, my teacher, he tells me that person is not important. This energy which has risen in you is important. And like you look after a young, what do you call, flower, which is not yet, what do you call, unfolded in your garden. You give it water at the proper time. You don't allow too much of water. You protect it from the wind. You protect it from too much of sun, right? And you give it proper fertilizer. He says, don't bother about that person. You, what do you call, nurture that energy which God has given you in this moment. Can you get it? Now, that other person, she may be far away from me. And in that far away, I'm not interested in meeting that person, even though there's the yearning for that person. I'm interested in expanding this energy of love. And as that energy of love expands, it fills being. It comes to the skin. It comes to our touch. It comes to our feeling. When we look at somebody, we look at somebody through that energy. Can you see? And can you see there's a transformation in our life? I mean, if you insult me, but I'm looking at you through the glasses of love, how can I feel insulted?
There is no form. When there is no form, then right. the love is love.
In that
the
moment,
person does not matter. Everything
just
is
by
love.
transforming this energy, I have reached a state of anand. But there is still that I inside who feels the anand. And that anand is something separate.
That is universal I, maybe.
It is an individual I which can merge into universal I and come back into the pot.
at a higher.
As individual I, it is still universal.
Okay. Back and forth at higher frequencies. Maybe that's what I.
So we can see this from many angles.
Rajan bhai, if you permit me, I can add something.
Please do, sir. Please do, sir.
See, normally in any relationship of love, initially it's more about exploring things, into one another. If a relationship is developing. But as this relationship starts maturing, then there always comes a time when togetherness is really important. Then they just go out and explore the world. Just being by the side of each other is enough. And later on, even that necessity of being together physically just dissolves.
Yes.
There's just a feeling of presence, or just the assurance of having one for the other. That's good enough. So this is how it is. The lower energies get sublimated into the higher forms.
Let us see it in a different way. The first is Radhe Govind. Go means the senses, the physical senses. So the one who is living in the physical senses, Govind. So the first love of Radha and Krishna is the physical love, where they meet. Right? Radhe Govind. Then Krishna goes away. Krishna is the one who attracts. The one who attracts. So he keeps attracting Radha's being, and she keeps dissolving her I into that. So the second stage of their relationship is Radhe Krishna, where she keeps dissolving into his attraction. She keeps dissolving her ego into her attraction. And at one point, there is no ego. The water in the pot is the water of the river. And that is Radhe Shyam. Shyam means inky darkness, the Akash Tattva. In that, who is Krishna and who is Radha, you don't know. Both have merged into that Akash Tattva, into that, what do you call, infinite emptiness. Of course, the flute is still playing. At a certain level, the flute is still playing. And in that, we recognize that Krishna is still there. But that is because the guna of Akash is sound. The guna of Akash being sound, the flute can still be heard. But we don't know who is Radha, but we don't know who is Krishna. But because the flute is playing, we say that has to be Krishna, because the flute is playing. Right? Maybe it's like that. So these are three stages in Radha's love: Radhe Govind, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Shyam, inky darkness. Akash.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So amazing.
Sir, we have one more person. I will add her. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, sir, good evening. I wanted to ask, you spoke about living from the lower emotional center. Hello?
The negative part of the emotional center.
Yeah, negative part of the emotional center. And you said like non-expression of negative emotions will lead us to the higher emotional, help us.
That is the beginning. That is the beginning.
So is there any particular practice, sir, like, how we, in small ways, we can start overcoming this negative emotions? And
see, we have to start in retrospect. Right? I feel jealous of you. Now, when I'm feeling jealous, I'm totally identified with that jealousy. But when I come home, I suddenly see, oh, in that moment, I felt jealous. So I visualize that moment, and I try to bring a moment of consciousness in my visualization. Say I practice this for 3 months, right? Now again, I go to somebody's home and I see something for which I'm jealous. And at that moment of jealousy, because I practiced for 3 months, suddenly I bring in consciousness and I pause that jealousy. I don't want to express that jealousy. I don't want to express it here. I don't want to express it out here. So the inner practice first starts from retrospect. Then a point comes when the jealousy is there, we are observing the jealousy. And a point comes where we transform the lower jealousy into something higher. Right?
Yeah.
3 steps.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sorry, I was asking the question that time and then my internet went down. It was about the koshas. Is this to do with the koshas, the sheets around the body?
Yes, it has, but we will take the koshas in some other talk.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much.
I
Thanks.
couldn't
And
be appropriate right now. Right?
yeah,
We'll take
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Rajan bhai, there are several messages here.
Right, sir.
People expressing their appreciation and joy at today's session. And I must say that, when you described Anand, you really brought it alive.
Thank you, sir.
For all of us. And because you were speaking from that space of bliss. And we are very grateful. And shall I close it now?
Please do, sir. Please do.
Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Om Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhino. Sarve Santu Niramayah. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.